obviously I've spent some time pointing out what I regard as the excesses of the radical left. I've certainly spent no shortage of time pointing out the excesses of the radical right in my classes, particularly, but I'm not publicly known for that specifically. It's my resistance my resistance to certain maneuvers on the side of the radical left that propelled me into the public eye. I've thought for a long while that the only people who can probably control the excesses of the radical left are people who are in the moderate left, not people on the right or on the extreme right. They're out of the argument to begin with, and this is associated in some sense. The difficulty of this is in some sense the difficulty that you just described. If people have an affiliation with you, then it's much more difficult to differentiate perhaps where you should. And so perhaps you see on the left, the moderate leftists, and then the more extreme leftists, but the extreme leftists are also on the left, and they're friends of a type. And drawing that line is extraordinarily difficult. And that's actually why, at least part of the reason why I'm leery of any attempts to restrict free speech, because in those cases of difficult differentiation, the only possible solution we have is dialogue about the problem, about exactly where to draw the line. Yeah. Because otherwise we can't. No one knows how. Yeah. And I guess it's because extremism also exists in degrees. And so you say, where do you stop? Yeah. And well, that's very, very difficult to say, especially among those who think like you, except for certain exceptions.
Yes, this is very true, and it's a sort of basic philosophical point, isn't it? That you can draw lines between what is reasonable, and they can be very narrow lines. But if you keep drawing them out, they become extreme. So, for example, you can have what some people might regard as a reasonable age for the termination of a pregnancy due to some issue. But if you keep adding days to it, it then becomes a serious problem. And anything in that nature of differentiating and drawing lines is bound to cause that to be a problem. And I, however, am less confident than you are that the left would be persuaded by someone like me, the hard left, the one wants to call it extreme left or the radical left, wherever it is. And this may sound a bit like a bit of boo-hooing, which is very easy to do. But if you're a soft liberal, as I think of myself, I can't find any other designation, but that sort of thing, a centrist. These are insults to the left. I mean, in English politics recently, for example, centrist was the boo word of the Corbynistas, the more socialist end of the Labour Party, a party I've been a member of since I could vote. And I felt very, very, very much buffeted about and despised for my, oh dear, but really, and oh must we? It's very... I do think of myself as a sort of cardiganed, beslippered old fool who is loathed on both sides. And it is, of course, historically true that in the 1930s, which is the decade we always go back to when we're very worried about the direction we're travelling in now, the communists and the Nazis both were absolutely of one mind when it came to people like me, Jewish, semi-intellectual, soft liberals who went, oh, no, but shush, because we didn't have any positivity, any certainty. It's... And as I say, I know it sounds like I'm sort of taking on a victim status here, that, oh, poor liberals, because after all, we've ruled the world for 200 years. And part of the political and cultural argument in the world at the moment is that the liberal project, the Enlightenment project, if you want to call it that, has failed.
I would say we've cooperatively guided the world, because I think ruled is the wrong term.
Well, exactly.
Monarchs and tyrants rule. Yeah. And it's a really important distinction, because that power is grounded in the sovereignty of the people. And imperfect as that may be, it's more grounded in the sovereignty of the people than any other system we've ever managed to whip up. So I mean, it's difficult also because it's difficult to make centrism dramatic and romantic. And it's much easier to make extremism dramatic and romantic. And that's one of its primary attractions. And that attraction should not be underestimated. And it's partly why I'm so interested in talking to you, because you are this incredible dramatist. You have this unbelievable talent that manifests itself in a manner that I thought, I was reading your Wikipedia biography in some detail, and it requires that. I thought, if you want to give yourself an inferiority complex quickly, going through your Wikipedia entry is a very good way of doing that. I mean, you have 50 films and like 40 TV shows and 5 novels and 7 autobiographies and a career in comedy that was absolutely outstanding, that would have been a lifetime achievement in and of itself, and a whole variety of honorary doctorates. And you have an intellectual end that's not trivial as well, because you were involved with Hitchens and Dawkins and the horsemen of the of the atheist movement. Yeah. And I really want to talk to you about that too, because I especially am interested in your opinions, because of all those people, you're the one that has the most connection with drama and literature and fiction. And you just published a couple of books, Mythos, Heroism, Heroes. Yeah. And there's a third one in that trilogy. It just escapes my mind. Troy. Yeah. And so you're obviously extraordinarily sensitive to the power and necessity of literary accounts. But then you're also a humanistic atheist. And I'm very curious about that. I mean, someone like Dawkins, he's so rational that I think for him, and I don't know if this is fair, and it might be a bit of a stereotype, but it'll do for rhetorical purposes. He's not gripped by drama in the same way you are. And there's a truth in drama that's not trivial, and that truth is allied with religious truth. So I want to go there too.
I can't speak for Richard. It's just been his 80th birthday, so we wish him happy birthday. And he's not the shrill beast of atheism that some people regard him as. But I won't speak for him, obviously. But what I would say is that, yes, you're right, he's a rationalist. And I don't think I am. I think I'm an empiricist. And I think that's part of my love of drama and myth and story and literature and history even, is these are all to do with experience, with human experience, the register of human experience, of testing an idea against what actually happens and how people actually behave, rather than devising a system of reason. And it's not that reason and empiricism are always absolutely opposed, but they sometimes are. And in the history of science, they have been. You know, you could argue that Pascal was a rationalist and Newton was an empiricist for all his, great mathematics and so on. He actually took a piece of cardboard and punched a hole in it, which is something that a rationalist probably wouldn't do. So it's experimenting in the crucible of human activity and observing what people say and hear. These are the things comedians do all the time. It's the comic mode, is to hear somebody say something grand and then say yes. But G.K. Chesterton is the perfect example of that. Now, he was certainly no atheist. He was a very religious man indeed, and a great hero of the Catholic Church. And some people even believe he should be, if not beatified, even sanctified. But he was a huge influence on me as a teenager growing up, because I read his essays. And here's an example. He opens an essay by saying, I read in the newspaper the other day this following sentence: at the trumpet call of Ibsen and Shaw, modern woman rises to take her place in society. And I thought to myself, this is very good news, very encouraging. I wonder if it's true. Let's see. Now, who's a modern woman? Oh, Mrs. Buttons. She comes in to clean every Tuesday and every Thursday. She lives in Clapham. She comes on the omnibus and she scrubs the floors, and she has 3 children. And if I say to myself, at the trumpet call of Ibsen and Shaw, Mrs. Buttons rises to take her place in society, I realize the sentence is not only nonsense, it's pernicious nonsense. And that's a sort of almost comical example, really, of saying you don't trust an abstract statement. You do not trust someone saying A plus A equals 2A, because there is no such thing in the universe as A. And although we're all capable of doing substitutional metaphorizing or algebra, as it were, with ideas, the fact is it's much better to say one thing of something that is real that we know plus another thing of something that is real that we know and have experienced is two of those things. Once you start abstracting, and that's what rationalism often is, it's going off on an algebraic journey which can produce beautiful thoughts and ideas and beautiful schemes. But for me, it is beating that out on the anvil of human experience is the absolute key. And it's a long intellectual tradition, empiricism, and I think we're in danger of losing it in